I think it's one of the biggest myths in football that the fixture list doesn't matter. I understand the old saying that you play everyone twice and therefore there's no consequence to it really, but I'm a big believer in the idea that timing is everything in football, and when you come up against a side can have a big effect on how your season pans out. I mean, I look at last season really with Liverpool, for example, getting Chelsea away from home on the first game of the season. Had they played that game a few weeks later when Chelsea had realised what a poor side they'd put together really, and they'd had a few more scars from defeats, I believe that Liverpool would have walked that game really, considering the distance that was proved to be between the two sides. And also you've got to look at maybe Arsenal as an example as well. They seemingly came up against a side that was missing its star player through injury every single week in the latter part of the season. And although we can't really know at this point whether that will happen to sides and what the fitness picture will look like, there are a few things I think we can glean from the fixture list that was released yesterday. So I'm going to take a little bit of a deep dive into Liverpool's schedule and see what we can learn from that and what we think about it. And I think, you know, we'll start with the start really, the opening fixtures that Liverpool have got, and I think they're particularly important this season because they've got a new manager, obviously Arne Slot coming in, and I think, you know, it's important, isn't it, if you are a new manager to get off to a good start. And I think, you know, when he saw that first game, I suppose maybe probably mixed feelings about it. Of course, Liverpool are facing Ipswich away from home. Now, I say mixed because, look, you're coming up against a side who are newly promoted. They should, in theory, be one of the weaker sides in the Premier League. And of course, it's a team in Ipswich that have come up back-to-back promotions under Kieran McKenna, done a great job there without making too many big tweaks to the team, which think, you know, essentially coming up against a side that, you know, if they don't make a raft of signings and it's kind of quiet around them at the moment, then, you know, you're effectively facing a team that's playing in the Premier League with League One personnel, or is that certainly what they were 2 years ago now. You know, I think that can be handy for Liverpool. I think that makes it, in theory, an easier game. But there are also, I think, counterpoints to that could make this a really tricky one. I think when you're facing a newly promoted side, I think the worst time really to face them is on the first game of the season. They haven't had the scars of defeat. They haven't had, you know, any disappointment so far. They're coming into it full of enthusiasm and excitement and that extra bit of adrenaline that can make you perform above your level. So I think, you know, that will be a big factor for Liverpool. And of course, the fact it's at Ipswich as well. I mean, you know, the back-to-back promotions they've had there, they're back in the Premier League after a long time. I think the atmosphere at Portman Road is going to be absolutely electric. So I think that kind of marks that out as a tricky first fixture for Liverpool. Like I said, I don't think you want to face the newly promoted sides away from home in the first weekend of the season. That is potentially a really difficult one. But in truth, if you look at Liverpool's sort of first opening 6 fixtures, I do think overall, you know, even accounting for the fact that Ipswich may be trickier than it might otherwise be, that it's a kind of a gentle opening that Liverpool have come up against. I mean, I'll look at the next 5 now and just go through their league positions from last season. So it's Brentford at home, finished 16th last season. Manchester United away, finished 8th last season. Nottingham Forest at home, 17th last season. Bournemouth at home, 12th last season. And Wolves away, 14th last season. Now, you know, you look at those league positions and even Manchester United very low down for their usual standards. So it looks on paper, you know, a lot of bottom half teams. I mean, even if you and you say that Ipswich, you know, obviously they're a newly promoted side, but if you say their position last season was 18th, so they were just in the relegation zone, you know, they could have finished 20th. We don't really know, but I just use that to work out an average. And the average there is a 14th place finish in the Premier League. So on paper, what Liverpool have got there is, as I say, a very gentle opening. You know, a sort of easy way into the season, which is exactly what you want. Obviously, football's not played on paper, and we know that, as I said, you know, the Ipswich game could be more difficult than it looks. You know, there are games there that can always turn out to be more tricky than you might think they would be. But I think that it does show you that, you know, it's an opening that you wouldn't be massively against if it had been suggested to you before it came out. I think, you know, Liverpool want to get off to a good start, and there's a real opportunity there in theory to make that. I mean, even looking at the toughest fixture in that run, without a doubt, of course, is Manchester United away from home. But I think even that one, I think there's an argument that it could be helpful where it's fallen. Obviously, it's the 3rd game of the season there to go to Manchester United away, and I think for starters, Jurgen Klopp's record wasn't very good there, so maybe Arne Slot can get immediate credit by changing that. And we can't think about what Klopp was like when he played there. It's going to be totally different under a new manager, and maybe that helps Liverpool to improve on what has been a poor record at Old Trafford in recent years. Maybe it'll be helpful to have a new manager at the helm. And I'd also say, for those big games sometimes, that away from home against a team who you expect to be in and around that top part of the table, I would say sometimes it can be helpful to face them away from home when they haven't quite got up to rhythm. Obviously, a third game of the season, you think that Manchester United won't be absolutely flying at that point. They might not be flying at all. They've had a difficult few seasons, really, haven't they? But I think they will be lacking rhythm. And for Liverpool, they want to go there. They want to disrupt Manchester United. They want to try and dominate the game. And I think that's much easier to do in a part of the season where, as I say, the home side are not going to be in rhythm. They're not going to be absolutely flying and playing the best kind of football. So makes it easier, I think, for the away side to go there and make it difficult for Manchester United. So that will be the aim, and I think will be, as I say, that can make things a little bit easier for Liverpool. Of course, they faced Manchester United away from home in the latter part of a lot of recent seasons, and obviously Liverpool have gone there in the midst of a title charge in most seasons, and Manchester United have been able to throw a spanner in the works. So I almost think it's handy to flip that and go to Manchester United away first, and then that the home game is to come. And it's actually true of, I'll just briefly mention this, is that the Everton games have been flipped as well, in that Liverpool will go away to Everton first and then have Everton at home in the second half of the season. And I do think that's helpful. Those have been difficult fixtures in recent years, having the Old Trafford away and Goodison away, and I think having them both at the first part of the season where teams, like I say, aren't quite in rhythm, and then you've got the home games to come when hopefully you're in title contention. I think that's a much better way to do it, is to have the home game second. So I think that's really handy, and another element of this start to the season that could prove to be a real positive for Liverpool. Now, of course, if you have a handy start like that, then you're going to get tough games elsewhere, and so it kind of proves with the running being a lot more tricky on paper. I mean, I'm going to focus in here on the last 6 games of the season, having looked at the first 6, and as you'd expect, with the first 6 being sort of kind ones on paper, the last 6 are a little bit tougher. I'll go through the games and obviously the finishing positions in last season's Premier League, and start off with Leicester away. Again, I'll give them that 18th position in the Premier League, as I did with Ipswich. I think that's only fair to the newly promoted sides. Spurs at home, who were 5th last season. Chelsea away, who were 6th last season. Arsenal at home, who were 2nd. Brighton away, 11th. And Palace at home, who were 10th. Now that averages out to a 9th place finish in the Premier League last season. So clearly much more tough than Liverpool's start. And again, if you're in title contention, having a tough run in is obviously a difficult one. The pressure's ramped up. You're coming up against sides who are very good. I mean, Palace there, they put them down for a 10th place finish, but the way they finished last season, they could be even higher than that this time around. They could be in European contention. So really tough running for Liverpool on paper. And I think one thing that's helpful, one thing that I think Arne Slot will see as a positive, is the fact that obviously they've got 3 top 6 sides in that last run-in, but 2 of those games are at home, obviously Spurs and Arsenal being clearly the toughest one. So that will at least be a little bit helpful. Obviously in this run-in, you're going to need Anfield. It's going to be massive. If Liverpool are in the title mix, and we hope that they will be, then Anfield in that period is going to be massive. But they're also going to have to come through some really tough tests on the road. I mean, Chelsea away is always a tricky one. Brighton away as well. So it's and Leicester could even be in a relegation scrap. We don't know where they're going to be next season, but that again could be more difficult than it looks on paper. So I think that finish off to the season is a little bit tricky for Liverpool on paper, and so I think it kind of shows as well that if they are going to be in title contention this season, they probably have to capitalise on what is a kind looking start, because you've got to give yourself some wiggle room if you've got a difficult run-in like that. And that is particularly true if you're going to be going up against Manchester City, who, let's be honest, are definitely going to be in title contention. We know that once it gets to March, if they get anywhere near a sniff of the title, that they basically just don't lose. So I think it's important for Liverpool, if they are going to be in the mix and they want to give themselves the opportunity for at least one slip-up in that run, then they've got to make a really strong start. And as I say, capitalise on a kind-looking start to the fixtures. Now, I'll move on now to another aspect to the fixture list that I thought was worth examining, and that is, of course, the games after Champions League games. Now, different format in the Champions League this season, not just the 6 group games, but actually 8, and it's obviously a different structure to that. So it's going to be kind of interesting. And I always think it's important who you face after those Champions League games, because if you get really, really tough games, you know, and you've been away in midweek, or even a home game in midweek against a particularly difficult side, you know, that can always start to throw a spanner in the works in terms of your Premier League campaign. So I've had a look at who Liverpool have got after these 8 fixtures in the Champions League and where they're scheduled, and don't think they've done too badly on this. I'll go through the 8 group games, and the game that immediately follows these is Bournemouth at home, Palace away, Arsenal away, probably the toughest by a long way really, Villa at home, City at home, actually that's quite tough as well, Fulham at home, Ipswich at home, Bournemouth away. I think one of the takeaways there is that 5 out of the 3 games they've got after Champions League games are at home. That's massively helpful. Obviously, if you have an away game in the Champions League and then you've got to travel to London or the South Coast or wherever, or Newcastle, that can be really difficult. Just adds a little bit of extra travel on that is not particularly helpful. So I think to have the balance of 5 homes and 3 aways is a really good thing in Liverpool's favour. Another thing worth mentioning, obviously, is that Arsenal and Manchester City, in that Arsenal away looks a really tough one. Liverpool could do with not being drawn away in the Champions League prior to that. If they could just get a home game and a lesser home game, that would make that really helpful. But I think the truth is with both the Arsenal and the Manchester City games, they're falling after Champions League games. They, of course, will both be in action in the Champions League as well, so could even work in Liverpool's favour, that one. If they both get bad draws, difficult games before the Liverpool game, then that could prove really, really helpful to Liverpool, and that's one thing that we're looking out for when the Champions League draw comes around, is exactly how that plays out. But I think on paper, as I say, not too bad really, that what Liverpool have ended up with there. I think that they'll be kind of happy with how those fixtures have fallen, or it's as good as you can hope for at times. Really, it's kind of difficult, particularly with there being 8 group games now. It just extends the amount of the season that plays over, and therefore you're always going to end up with a few tricky fixtures in there. But as I say, it's not bad and could be worse really. And I think, to be honest, that is kind of a summary of Liverpool's fixture list overall. Really is not too bad at all, and could be much worse. And I think the most encouraging aspect of it all is that there's a real opportunity there to make a strong start in the Premier League. Obviously, Arne Slot is coming in and he's following a legend in Jurgen Klopp, so I think he really needs to get off to a good start to get the fans on side. And of course, if Liverpool are going to challenge for the title, they need to make a good start anyway, because I don't think Manchester City and Arsenal, with the way they've been in the last couple of seasons, are going to let you get away with a mixed start or a sticky start at all. You're going to have to be on it from the off. So I think there's a real opportunity for Liverpool to do that. But of course, it's not played on paper, is it? The game, they've got to play it on grass, and they've got to make the most of that. And of course, we are closer to knowing now whether Slot will make that good start or not. The season is closing in. We've got the fixture list now, so it's getting very excited. Of course, I want you to let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the fixture list. Do you think Liverpool have got a good draw there? Will they make the most of that good start? What do you think of the run-in? Is that difficult? And what do you think of how things have landed in terms of the Champions League and how that will play out? Or, of course, you may think the fixture list doesn't matter at all. Do let me know if you think that in the comments as well. Always interested to hear your thoughts. And, of course, if you can like and subscribe, always massively helpful to the channel. Experiencing real growth at the moment and really pleased about that. And, of course, hoping the transfers will ramp up slightly, so we'll get a few more transfer updates to come in the next few weeks, because it is a little bit quiet at the moment, but I'm sure it will start to ramp up. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll say to you guys now that I'll see you soon.